So it's a long time since I've run in a pair of Hoka shoes, and that's mainly because a long time ago Hoka made it pretty clear that they weren't interested in people like me, that is, people with slightly broad feet. But still, I do have fond memories of long, easy runs in Hoka Cliftons in the 2E width, of course. But when Asics found their mojo, I moved away from Hoka and never really found a reason to move back. And then along came the Cielo X1 3.0. Let's chat. So I was originally attracted to the Hoka Cielo X1 3.0, let's just call it the Cielo, because it looked like a whole lot of fun. Previously, over the last 6 months, I have had a ridiculous amount of fun in my Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro 3s. They're an extremely flawed but spectacularly enjoyable pair of shoes, which I often reach for fast runs when I just want to run with a smile on my face. And I wanted another pair of shoes just like these ones, and the Hoka Cielos looked like they would also put a smile on my dial. When I ordered the Cielos, I ordered half a size up, a US 10 instead of a US 9.5, because Hoka. The width in the US 10 is still just the tiniest bit narrow, but actually it's stretching to my width. The new Cielo has a claimed stack height of 38mm at the back and 31mm at the front for a 7mm drop, but it is clearly much higher than that in the heel. There is some mathematical witchcraft going on to get this shoe, and the same thing happened with this one, under the legal 40mm limit. I believe what happens is that the shoe company is allowed to take a measurement from this chopped off bit, so they can take a measurement further up and perhaps one further down and take the average of the two. If anybody knows how this works, please do feel free to explain it in the comments below. But the truth is, this shoe is a lot higher than 38mm at the back. The stack, as far as I can tell in my own rough measurements, is somewhere between 45 and 50mm in height. Anyway, what this means is they are a very, very tall shoe, and they are also very, very unstable. I was pretty happy that I didn't sprain my ankle several times as I was walking out the front door to go for my first run. But once you get moving in the new Cielos, they become a completely different beast altogether. But before we talk about the running experience, let's quickly go through the stats. The Cielos came in at 216 grams on my dodgy kitchen scales, which is not extremely light for a racing shoe these days, but also not incredibly heavy for a shoe with this much stack. They have a very comfortable and very breathable racing upper, which a lot of shoe brands are getting right these days, and Hoka is one of them. And they do have enough room in the toe box as long as I said, you go up at least half a size if you have broader feet. There is very comfy padding around the heel cup and extremely minimal padding, but actually just enough around the ungusseted and fairly badly behaved tongue. You'll find that when you're putting on these shoes, this happens. The wings, if you like, of the ungusseted tongue tend to fold over, and they make a bit of a pain of themselves. But once you've got the shoe on and laced up, there are no more problems. Everything behaves and stays in place. Speaking of laced up, there are lovely light sawtooth laces, which do a really, really good job of achieving lockdown with this non-stretch racing upper. Within this massive stack of midsole, there is a carbon plate, which you can see in the massive canyon between the two different sections of the midsole. The legendary running shoe reviewer Kofuzi on YouTube recently said that when he looks at this carbon plate, he sees a person flexing their muscles. And I've got to say, ever since he said that, that is all that I can see when I look at the bottom of these shoes. I think I have been Kofuzi'd. And actually, that carbon plate is very, very necessary to hold together and ensure performance in this massive stack of PEBA foam, which, by the way, Hoka has not given a silly name. They've spared us the marketing misery. They're treating us like grown-ups. So thank you, Hoka, for just calling it foam. And as I said, in that great big stack of foam, there is a canyon, a chasm running down the middle of it. Is very, very deep. That, fortunately, does not collect rocks and rubbish like, remember those rock collecting holes in the bottoms of the Superblast 1s. Fortunately, this does not do the same thing. I've had nothing caught in this gap during several runs. And while we're down here, the super sticky outsole rubber, I think, should win an award for the best looking outsole of any shoe in all of history. Isn't it lovely? I think maybe a close second place would be my Wave Rebellion Pros. There is something about these super stack racing shoes that inspires greatness in the design of the outsole. In fact, I think the Hoka Cielo X1 3.0 all up is a really, really nice looking shoe. And I've got to say that was part of the attraction for me as well. Getting back to that outsole, it is, as well as being very good looking, incredibly sticky. It does its job incredibly well. I would go as far as saying that it has actually knocked PumaGrip off its perch as the best and stickiest outsole on a running shoe. This is incredibly effective in the wet, in the dry, in the dust, in the dirt. It has done a brilliant job. Only time will tell if it's really durable, if it's still this good and this sticky after 200, 300, 400 kilometers. But right now, I'm putting it at the top of the tree. So what are these Cielos like to run in? Well, as I said, when you first put them on, when you're walking around the house, they are incredibly unstable. I was completely unable to stand on one foot without getting the death wobbles. And I'm actually pretty good at standing on one foot, but in these shoes, no way. But as I mentioned earlier, once you start running, all of that wobbly seasickness feeling goes away, and what you're left with is an incredibly comfortable, spongy running experience. That spongy comfort is a massive part of the charm of these shoes, but also a little bit of the problem that I personally have with these shoes, but that you might not. The softness and the sponginess makes these shoes, I think, really comfortable for a slow run, for a recovery run, for an easy run. They're also really great for medium pace runs. And of course, they are also very good for fast runs. But I find after a fast run in these, I am a little bit more tired than I would be in a fast run in other types of racing shoes. Let me explain. When you're running fast in the Cielo X1 3.0s, your feet sink in to this massive slab of foam, and there's a bit of a pause before it springs you back out again. The shoe is not quite as immediately responsive as many other racing shoes that I've tried. And this can be really good and it can be really bad. It means the shoe is incredibly comfortable and incredibly forgiving and actually really, really fun to wear. But at the same time, it means that you're making a tiny bit more effort with every single step because every step is taking that split second longer. That tiny hesitation before the shoe springs you forward is actually quite enjoyable and quite comfortable. It's something that I didn't mind at all. It makes the shoe fun and friendly and fast, but not quite furious. The soles of my feet at the end of the run were also quite warm because I'd felt all of that squishing down and pumping back up again and squishing down and pumping back up again. And I think that meant there was more rubbing of the skin on the soles of my feet. I wasn't blistered. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't even uncomfortable. It just felt like a slightly warmer running experience. So what exactly am I saying? Is this soft responsiveness good or bad? Well, and I hate it when shoe reviewers say this, but it actually depends on what you prefer. For me, every day of the week when I go out for a fast run, I will very happily choose one of these two shoes because they are fast and full of potential and really, really fun. But I probably would not choose them for a race event. That's because I prefer a more immediate rebound, a firmer type of feeling in all of the shoes that I wear. And so what about you? How do you make the choice? What I'd say is if you are into softer, shoes into spongier shoes for all of the runs that you do. If, for example, you would choose an Asics Nimbus over an Asics Superblast for a long, slow training run, then this is absolutely the race shoe for you. If you love that sense of comfort tuned towards performance, then yeah, I would recommend you try these ones on. What about with your running form? Well, as I said, these Cielos run slow just as well as they run fast. In fact, I will be wearing these out for certain recovery runs just because they're so much fun. For people who forefoot strike or midfoot strike, obviously they'll be an excellent shoe. I don't naturally heel strike, but as I'm testing shoes, I do try and force myself to do that. And I've got to say that felt just as good in this shoe as well. So I think these will serve heel strikers quite well, despite that massive cavern down the middle of the shoe. It does not make it unstable as you're running. So yes, if you want a really comfy, fun shoe for fast runs, for slow runs, for any types of runs really, and you've got the cash to splash on these very, very expensive Hoka Cielo X1 3.0s, I say go for it. They are a tiny bit crazy. They are very, very narrow in your usual size, so keep that in mind. You might want to go half a size up like I did. And they are mildly impractical. But having said that, because of their broad range of applications, because this foam is so good at so many paces, I actually would not say that these shoes are as impractical as most other race shoes. In fact, they can do a lot more than most other race shoes can. And most importantly, like my beloved Wave Rebellion Pro 3s, they put the fun back in running. They make you look forward to going out for a run, and that is everything in a shoe. So I hope that helped. Please do like and subscribe below for lots more running shoe reviews, particularly the honest and real-world review of the Superblast 3 coming up. Until then, have a spectacular week. I will see you then.